Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a huge topic today, one that's getting more real by the minute. In a world of AI, what actually happens to our jobs?
Seriously, just think about it for a second. What if your job just vanished tomorrow? Now, this isn't some far-off sci-fi plot anymore. For millions of people, it's becoming a very real possibility. And the fallout? Well, it's not just about losing a paycheck. It goes way deeper, right into our identity, our purpose, and really the whole structure of how we live.
So to figure out what happens when work goes away, we first have to get a handle on what it actually is. I mean, why do we work? Sure, the paycheck is a big part of it, but as you'll see, there is so much more going on under the surface.
Sociologists have looked at this from a few different angles. You've got one view that says work is basically the glue holding society together, right? It's how we get goods, services, and even our place in the social order. Then you have a more critical take, like from Karl Marx, who argued that work is often a system of oppression and a source of deep conflict. And then there's a third view that zooms in on the personal level, how our jobs literally define our day-to-day interactions and how we see ourselves.
And that last point is a really big one. The bottom line is, for so many of us, our jobs are a massive part of who we are. I mean, just think about it. What's one of the first questions you ask someone new? So, what do you do? Our work isn't just a task. It becomes the story we tell about ourselves.
All right, so we've set the stage. Now, let's bring in the disruptor, artificial intelligence. And let me be clear, this isn't just another industrial revolution. This is something else entirely.
For decades, we thought of automation as something for factories, robots on an assembly line. It was a blue-collar thing. But this new wave of AI, it's coming for white-collar work. It's targeting routine cognitive tasks, which is basically a huge chunk of what happens in an office every single day.
And this is where things get, well, pretty scary. People like Edward Forget are sounding the alarm. They're warning that this could split society in two. You'll have a tiny elite who own the AI and reap all the rewards, and then everyone else, scrambling for the few jobs that are left. We could be looking at a level of inequality we've never seen before.
This whole scenario actually echoes a really old idea from Karl Marx called alienation. That feeling of being a cog in a machine, totally disconnected from what you're actually doing. But here's the twist. What if the new alienation isn't about being disconnected from your work, but from not having any work to be connected to in the first place?
Okay, so if millions of jobs are on the chopping block, what do? How does society even function? Well, this is where the conversation gets really interesting, and maybe a little radical.
Right now, two big ideas are leading the pack. First, you've got Universal Basic Income, or UBI. Super simple concept. The government gives every single citizen a regular paycheck, no questions asked. Then there's Universal Basic Capital, or UBC. This one's a little different. Instead of cash, everyone gets a piece of the action, like shares in big companies. So as AI makes the economy boom, everyone gets a cut. Think of it this way. UBI is a safety net. UBC is a stake in the game.
But wait a minute, how in the world would we pay for something like that? It sounds impossibly expensive, right? That's the huge trillion-dollar question hanging over all of this.
Well, one very real idea is already happening. It's called a digital service tax. Basically, we tax the massive revenues of the tech giants who are driving this change. You're already seeing countries like the UK and Austria do this. And there's a bigger push for a global minimum tax on these huge companies. The core idea is simple. The wealth being generated by AI is astronomical. The money is there, we just have to figure out a fair way to distribute it.
Okay, let's imagine for a second that we solve the money problem. What does this post-work world actually feel like to live in? Is it the dream of a creative paradise? Or does it become a nightmare of boredom and feeling useless?
Folks like Elon Musk have a pretty clear vision. He says work will become optional, something you do because you want to, for personal satisfaction, not because you have to pay the rent.
And if you want to see this idea taken to its logical extreme, you have to check out Ian M. Banks' science fiction novels about the culture. It's this amazing vision of a future where there's no scarcity. People's work is, well, it's basically play. You might spend your afternoon designing a mountain just for fun, or get together with friends to build a starship as a weekend hobby. It's a world where you do things just for the love of doing them, not to survive.
But, and this is a really big but, is that kind of life actually fulfilling? If there's no real struggle, no real challenge, does life start to feel empty? Kind of like you're playing a video game with the cheat codes turned on.
And what's fascinating is that Banks explores this exact idea in his own books. There's a character, Ziller, who comes from a much tougher world, and he just can't stand the culture. To him, all this perfection and safety feels fake. He calls it a cheat because there are no real stakes, no real consequences.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem. If a machine can just instantly master a skill that would take a human a lifetime of practice, what's the point of even trying? What happens to human achievement when an AI can not only do our jobs better, but also create more profound art or write more beautiful music? Where do we find our value then?
And that's the final boss, really. It all boils down to this fundamental human drive to be useful, to contribute something. We are wired to seek meaning and purpose. So the big existential question is, in a post-work world, where do we find it?
So this whole massive society-level discussion ultimately comes right back to you, to us. This isn't just an economic debate. It's about what it's going to mean to be a person in the 21st century.
Look, we're standing at a fork in the road. And what's wild is that the same exact technology, AI, is pointing us down two totally different paths. On one side, you have the utopian dream, a world without chores, a world of endless creativity and passion projects. But on the other side, you have a real existential risk, a future where millions feel obsolete, disconnected, and desperate to find a purpose in a world that seemingly left them behind.
Which brings us to the final question. And it's not for economists or politicians to answer, it's for you. In a future where you don't have to work to survive, will you? And if not, what will you do instead? It might sound far away, but we're all going to have to answer that question, and probably a lot sooner than any of us think.